Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about building your very own digital fortress. We're going to get into the rules, the tools, and the strategies, basically everything you need to know to keep your corner of the internet safe and sound. So, let's just kick things off with a question that, honestly, affects every single one of us. I mean, think about it. You're sending an email, maybe buying something online, or just mindlessly scrolling through your feed. But have you ever really stopped to think about what's happening to your data in those exact moments?
And that right there is the core problem. In the security world, they call it data in transit. It's all that information just zipping between your phone, your laptop, and servers all over the world. Now imagine that data is like a message being carried across an open field with no guard. It's totally exposed, right? Well, that's exactly what network security is built to stop.
Okay, so let's get into it. Before we can even lay the first stone of our fortress, we need the blueprints, right? We need to know the rules of engagement. And these are the fundamental ideas that guide pretty much every security decision out there.
And it all starts with this thing called the CIA triad. And no, not that CIA. This is the absolute bedrock of information security. It's a simple framework that helps us figure out what we're actually trying to protect. You know, things like keeping secrets secret, making sure data doesn't get messed with, and, of course, making sure we can actually get to our stuff when we need it.
So let's break this down even further. You've got confidentiality. That's all about keeping things private. Think about someone trying to snoop on your Wi-Fi at a coffee shop. We want to stop that. Then there's integrity. This means making sure the data isn't tampered with, so the file you send is the exact same file that arrives, no changes. And finally, availability. This one's simple. Your stuff needs to be online and working, even when someone's trying to attack it and take it down.
All right, so we've got the rules. Now let's open up the toolbox. Let's see how security pros actually get this job done. I mean, how do they see what's happening on a network, and how do they build and test all their defenses?
First up is a tool called Wireshark. Now, the technical term is a packet analyzer, but honestly, just think of it as a detective's magnifying glass for your network. It lets you see every single piece of raw data flowing back and forth. It gives you this incredible visibility into what's really happening under the hood.
And using it is this really simple but super powerful three-step process. First, you capture a whole stream of traffic, but that can be like drinking from a fire hose. So next, you filter it. You narrow it down to just the specific conversation you're interested in. And then finally, you analyze those specific little data packets, looking for anything weird, any clues or anomalies that could point to a threat.
Okay, so if Wireshark is all about seeing the network, our next tool, Cisco Packet Tracer, is all about building it. Think of it like a virtual sandbox. It's a simulation program where you can design, configure, and even launch attacks on a network, all without any real-world risk. It's the perfect playground to learn and experiment safely.
And this is where you can really get your hands dirty and practice building up those defenses. For example, you could drop in a virtual router and apply something called an access control list, or ACL. It's really just a fancy term for a set of rules to block traffic you don't want. Or you could use a switch to chop up the network into smaller, more secure zones. It's just a fantastic, hands-on way to learn this stuff.
All right, now we get to the really fun part. We've got our principles, we've got our tools. It's time to actually start building this fortress. We're talking walls, gates, guard towers, the whole shebang. Because this is all about building a defense in layers. So, your absolute first line of defense, the main gate, the outer walls of your fortress, that's your firewall. Its job is to be the ultimate gatekeeper. It inspects every bit of traffic coming in and going out, and then decides what to allow based on a set of security rules you give it.
But here's the thing. Not all firewalls are created equal. You've got stateless ones, which are kind of like a simple guard with a checklist. They're super fast, but not very smart. Then you have stateful firewalls. These are more like a detective. They actually remember the context of a conversation. This means much better security, but yeah, they do require a bit more power to run.
Okay, next layer. We need a secret passage for our most important data. That's where a VPN comes in, a virtual private network. What it does is create this secure, encrypted tunnel for your data to travel through. So even if you're on that sketchy public Wi-Fi at the coffee shop, your data is completely invisible to anyone trying to spy on it.
And VPNs are incredibly versatile. They're not just for one thing. Companies use them to give remote employees secure access to the main network. They're also used to connect entire branch offices together over the internet. And of course, lots of us use them just to protect our personal web browsing.
Now, what about threats that might actually slip past the outer walls? Well, for that, we need guards.
First, you have an intrusion detection system, an IDS. Think of this as the watchdog. It just sits there, watches everything, and if it sees something suspicious, it starts barking. It sends you an alert. But then you have an intrusion prevention system, an IPS. This is the bodyguard. It doesn't just see the threat. It actively steps in and blocks it right then and there.
And let's wrap up our fortress with two more absolutely critical layers. First is network segmentation. This is kind of like building watertight compartments in a ship. You divide your network into smaller zones, so if one area gets breached, the damage is contained and doesn't sink the whole thing. And then you have DOS mitigation, which is all about defending against those brute force flood attacks that try to overwhelm your services with just a tsunami of traffic until they collapse.
Okay, I know that was a lot of technical detail, so you might be asking, why does all this actually matter? What is the real-world impact of all these tools and techniques? Why is this stuff so critical to understand?
Well, here's why it matters. This isn't just theory. The research is clear. Having actual, hands-on skills with the very tools we just talked about, Wireshark, firewalls, VPNs, can reduce the risk of a security breach by up to 40%. I mean, think about that. That is a massive, massive impact. Knowing how to build the fortress is what actually keeps it from falling.
And that really brings us to the key takeaway here. Effective security, building that digital fortress, it's not about finding one single magic tool or one perfect piece of software. It's about building layers of defense. It's about having a deep, resilient, and adaptive strategy where all these different pieces work together to keep you safe.
So that leaves us with one final thought. We all know that digital threats are constantly changing. Attackers get smarter and more creative every single day. So the question for all of us really is, what comes next? As we look ahead to 2025 and beyond, what's going to be the next essential layer we need to add to our digital fortress?